He convinced himself she was working for his business rival and gathering information. When she arrived at a simple house where 3 identical 2-year-old boys came running and calling her mommy, his suspicion instantly transformed into astonishment. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The summer air was thick with promise as Mia Davis hurried through the gleaming lobby of Thornton Industries. At 24, she walked with purpose, her sensible heels clicking against the marble floor as she balanced a cardboard tray of coffee and a folder stuffed with reports. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, professional and understated, just like the navy pantsuit she'd saved 3 months to buy. "Morning, George," she called to the security guard, who tipped his hat with a smile. Mia had a way of making friends in every corner of the imposing building, from the maintenance staff to the executive assistants on the top floor. The elevator carried her to the 40th floor, where she'd spent the past 18 months as an assistant to the executive team. Her position had been hard-won. A girl from Chicago's South Side with a community college degree wasn't the typical Thornton Industries hire. But Mia had graduated with distinction in business administration, and her interview answers had impressed even the most skeptical HR manager. "You're here early again," remarked Janet, the other executive assistant, glancing at her watch. "It's barely 7. "Quarterly reports are due," Mia replied, setting down a coffee on Janet's desk. "Thought I'd get a head start before everyone arrives." What she didn't say was that these early mornings and late nights had become her strategy for success, and more recently, her opportunity to spend time with James Thornton. James had taken over as CEO just 3 months ago, following his father's sudden heart attack. At 32, he cut an impressive figure: Harvard Business School, piercing blue eyes, and the confident air of someone born to lead. The Thornton name adorned half the buildings in Chicago's financial district, a dynasty built on real estate and investments spanning 3 generations. Mia settled at her desk and began organizing the day's files. The office remained quiet for another hour before doors began opening and closing, the hum of business gradually filling the space. She was deep in concentration when a shadow fell across her desk. "You beat me here again, Mia." She looked up to find James standing there, his tailored suit accentuating broad shoulders, a faint smile playing on his lips. Her heart stuttered in her chest, as it always did when he appeared unexpectedly. "Someone has to keep this place running, Mr. Thornton," she replied with professional warmth. "James," he corrected, as he always did. "Any chance you can stay late tonight? The Singapore projections need reviewing before tomorrow's call." Their eyes met, holding for a beat longer than necessary. "Of course," she said, ignoring the flutter in her stomach. "I'll order dinner." This had become their pattern over the past 3 months. Late nights reviewing documents, takeout containers pushed aside as they worked through projections and strategies. James valued her insights, asking questions that went far beyond her administrative role. And somewhere between financial models and market analyses, something had shifted. The first kiss had happened 6 weeks ago, after midnight in his office, the Chicago skyline glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. He'd touched her cheek with surprising tenderness, murmuring that he couldn't stop thinking about her. "This is complicated," he'd whispered against her lips. "I know," she'd responded, even as she leaned into his touch. What had followed was an intoxicating secret. Stolen moments in his office after everyone had left, weekend texts that made her pulse race, and clandestine dinners in exclusive restaurants far from the business district where they wouldn't be recognized. That evening, as the office emptied, Mia gathered the Singapore files and knocked on James's door. "Enter," came his voice, deep and commanding. He sat behind his massive desk, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. When he saw her, his expression softened. "I've ordered from that Italian place you like," he said, gesturing to the couch in the corner of his spacious office. "Should be here in 20. They worked through the projections methodically, Mia pointing out inconsistencies in the Asian market forecasts that even James had missed. As they finished, he leaned back, studying her with undisguised admiration. "You're wasted as an assistant, you know that?" She smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe someday I'll be sitting in your chair." "I'd bet on it," he said, moving closer. "You're extraordinary, Mia." Later, in his sleek Lakeshore Drive apartment, she traced patterns on his chest as they lay in his king-sized bed, the city lights creating patterns on the ceiling. "Tell me more about your childhood," he murmured, playing with her hair. She hesitated. They rarely discussed personal matters. "Not much to tell. Single mom, South Side, worked hard to get scholarships. First in my family to finish college, even if it was just community." "Don't say just. You're brilliant. Look where you are now." Mia smiled against his shoulder. "And where is that exactly?" Instead of answering, he kissed her deeply, and the question dissolved into the night. For 3 months, they maintained this delicate balance, professional by day, lovers by night. James never spoke of the future, and Mia never pressed. She was falling in love but kept those words locked safely away, afraid to shatter whatever this was between them. Until an autumn afternoon when everything changed. Mia sat on the edge of her bathtub in her small apartment, staring at the plastic stick in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. She'd taken 3 tests, just to be sure. She was pregnant. Fear and elation warred within her. This wasn't planned. They'd been careful mostly. But as the initial shock subsided, a tentative hope blossomed. Perhaps this would bring clarity to their undefined relationship. James spoke often of family legacy. Surely a child would matter to him. That evening, she stood outside his apartment door, heart pounding. She'd texted earlier, asking if they could meet, saying she needed to discuss something important. He'd suggested his place rather than the office. James opened the door in casual clothes, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He kissed her briefly before leading her inside. "Wine?" he offered, moving toward the kitchen. "No, thank you," she replied, hands clasped tightly together. "I need to talk to you about something." He turned, reading the seriousness in her expression, and gestured toward the living room. "Everything okay?" They sat on his pristine white couch, the Chicago skyline sprawling beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Mia took a deep breath, willing her voice not to shake. "I'm pregnant, James." The words hung in the air between them. She watched his face, hoping for a flicker of joy or at least reassurance. Instead, she saw something else entirely. His features hardened, jaw tightening, eyes going cold in a way she'd never witnessed. The silence stretched, suffocating. Then, inexplicably, he laughed, a short, cold sound that cut through her like glass. "You really think this means something to me?" His voice was different, harder, contemptuous. Mia remained frozen as he stood, circling the coffee table like a predator sizing up its prey. "James, a black girl from the South Side, with a degree from some community college." Each word struck like a physical blow. "You really thought you had a place in my life, in the circles I move in?" Her throat constricted. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be the same man who'd whispered admiration against her skin just nights before. "You were a mistake, Mia," he continued, his voice clinical now. "A temporary distraction that's now become inconvenient." She watched, numb, as he walked to a side table, opened a drawer, and pulled out a checkbook. The scratch of his pen seemed obscenely loud in the silent apartment. "This should cover whatever solution you choose." He filled in an amount, tore out the check, and placed it on the table between them. "Or if you decide to have it, this will be enough to start somewhere else." Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "I don't want your money." "Don't be stupid," he snapped. "For once, be practical." He pushed the check toward her. Disappear from Chicago. Use my name, and I'll use every bit of the Thornton power to ensure you never get a decent job in this city again." Mia stood on shaking legs, dignity somehow intact despite the devastation. "You don't mean this. This isn't you." "This is exactly who I am," he replied coldly. "You just saw what you wanted to see." She picked up the check, a reflex, not acceptance, and moved toward the door, her body operating on autopilot while her mind reeled. "One more thing," he called as her hand touched the doorknob. "If you're thinking of making any sort of claim or going to the press, remember that my family has weathered scandals for generations. You would be destroyed long before anyone believed you." The door closed behind her with a soft click, so incongruous with the violence of what had just occurred inside. Mia made it to the elevator before the first sob escaped her throat, hand pressed against her mouth to muffle the sound. In the weeks that followed, James's threats proved to be more than empty words. She was called into HR at Thornton Industries and informed that her position was being eliminated due to restructuring. When she applied for other administrative roles in Chicago's financial sector, interviews that started promisingly would end with awkward expressions and vague excuses about not being the right fit. Her savings dwindled rapidly. She was forced to move from her modest but decent apartment to a tiny studio in a dangerous neighborhood where gunshots sometimes served as alarm clocks. The pregnancy advanced, morning sickness, fatigue, and growing medical bills adding to her struggles. By her 5th month, when an ultrasound revealed she was carrying twins, Mia was working 3 separate jobs: substitute receptionist in the mornings, diner waitress in the afternoons, and data entry clerk at night. The pay barely covered rent and mounting medical expenses. During the rare hours of rest, she obsessively studied business books, financial planning, and entrepreneurship guides borrowed from the public library. It was in a hospital corridor, after nearly fainting from exhaustion during a double shift at the diner, that Mia found clarity. A kind nurse found her crying in a plastic chair, hands cradling her growing belly. "Honey, you can't go on like this," the older woman said gently. "You're carrying 2 lives besides your own." "I don't have a choice," Mia sobbed. "We always have choices," the nurse replied, patting her hand. "They're not always easy ones, but they exist." That night, Mia called her mother in Detroit, breaking months of proud silence. They hadn't spoken since Mia had proudly announced her executive assistant position at Thornton Industries, a job her mother had warned might not be the opportunity it seemed. "I'm coming home, Mom," she whispered into the phone, "but not to stay. I need a safe place to have my babies, and then I'm starting over. New York. I'm going to build something that no one can take away from me." Sitting on the bus to Detroit the following week, stroking her prominent belly, Mia made a promise to the children she carried. "He said we weren't enough. I'm going to show the world exactly how much we're worth." As she tucked the torn check into a memory box, Mia couldn't imagine that 15 years later, that piece of paper would be displayed in a glass case in her office atop a Manhattan skyscraper, symbolizing the beginning of her rise. As she tucked the torn check into a memory box, Mia couldn't imagine that 15 years later, that piece of paper would be displayed in a glass case in her office atop a Manhattan skyscraper, symbolizing the beginning of her rise. The rejection letter from Wexford Financial arrived on a Tuesday morning. Mia stared at the formal language, the hollow phrases that by now had become painfully familiar. "While your qualifications are impressive, regrettably unable to offer. Wish you success in your future endeavors." This had been her 7th interview in 3 weeks. Each had followed the same pattern: initial enthusiasm from the interviewer, probing questions about her experience at Thornton Industries, a promised follow-up call that never came. Instead, these polite rejection letters arrived like clockwork, each one driving the knife deeper. Mia slumped at her tiny kitchen table, one hand resting protectively on her growing belly. The table wobbled when she leaned forward, just another broken thing in an apartment full of them. The ceiling stain above the sink had grown since yesterday's rain, and somewhere in the walls, pipes groaned like a creature in pain. Her phone buzzed. The screen displayed a text from her former co-worker Janet. "Hey, heard about Wexford? James was golfing with their CFO yesterday. I'm sorry, Mia." A cold wave washed over her. So this was how it would be. Each time she applied somewhere, invisible strings would be pulled. The Thornton name opened doors throughout Chicago's business world and apparently closed them just as easily. She deleted the message without responding. Janet meant well, but what was there to say? That the father of her unborn children was systematically destroying her professional life? That each rejection pushed her closer to financial ruin? The stack of bills on her counter seemed to grow by the day. Rent already 2 weeks late. The first of many medical invoices from her prenatal visits. A final notice from the electric company. Her bank account showed a balance that wouldn't cover even half of what she owed. Mia opened her laptop, pulling up her meticulously updated spreadsheet. 3 columns: expenses, income, savings. The numbers told a stark story. At her current rate of expenditure, even with 3 part-time jobs, she had perhaps 6 weeks before complete financial collapse. "We need a new plan," she whispered to her unborn children. "And we need it now." 2 days later, Mia stood in the dimly lit office of Deerfield Property Management, trying not to wince at the cigarette smoke that clung to everything. The manager, a heavy-set man named Frank, glanced at her application without really reading it. "You're qualified for better places than this," he said, eyeing her skeptically. "Why you want to live in West Park Apartments? It ain't exactly family-friendly." "Because it's the only place I can afford that doesn't require a credit check," she thought, "because everywhere else has rejected me." "It's temporary," she said instead, "just until I get back on my feet." Frank shrugged. "Rent's due first of the month. Late fees $50 a day. Water's included, but heating ain't. No pets, no noise after 10, no exceptions." The apartment he showed her was worse than she'd imagined. Peeling linoleum, a bathroom where mold had claimed permanent residence, windows that rattled with every passing truck. But the rent was $400 less than her current place. $400 she desperately needed for doctor's appointments and prenatal vitamins. "I'll take it," she said, signing the lease with a steady hand that belied the churning in her stomach. That weekend, she packed her belongings into garbage bags and the few boxes she'd collected from grocery stores. Her mother had offered to drive from Detroit to help, but pride kept Mia from accepting. She wasn't ready to admit how completely her life had unraveled. A neighbor from her old building helped load her things into a borrowed pickup truck. As they drove away, Mia didn't look back at the apartment where she'd once harbored such hopeful dreams of advancement and success. The morning receptionist job came through a temp agency that didn't ask too many questions. The position at Midway Medical Group involved answering phones, filing paperwork, and ignoring the occasional lingering glance from doctors who wondered when she was due but were too polite to ask. "We need someone who can cover Mondays, Wednesdays, and every other Friday," the office manager explained. "Pays $15 an hour. No benefits since you're temporary." Mia nodded, calculating quickly. 3 days a week, 8 hours a day. Not enough, but a start. The diner job followed that same week, waitressing at Lou's, a greasy spoon in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The manager, a tired-looking woman named Rita, hired her on the spot. "Afternoon shifts, 4 to 10, Rita said, handing Mia a stained apron. "Tips are decent if you hustle. Customers mostly mind their business. You start showing too much, we'll have to talk, but for now you're fine." By the 3rd week of May, Mia had added a night job, data entry for a medical billing company that allowed remote work. 3 nights a week, after returning from the diner with swollen ankles and an aching back, she would open her laptop and input endless codes until her vision blurred and her fingers cramped. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford. 4 hours on a good night, often less. Her pregnancy books, borrowed from the public library, warned against such exhaustion, but what choice did she have? The morning sickness that had plagued her first trimester had finally subsided, replaced by a constant gnawing hunger that her budget couldn't satisfy. She rationed her meals carefully, splurging only on prenatal vitamins and the occasional carton of milk. One evening in June, as Mia counted her tips from Lou's, $37.43, her phone rang. The screen displayed "Mom." With a deep breath, she answered, "Hey, Mom. Mia Davis, it's been 3 weeks since you called. I was about to file a missing persons report." Despite everything, Mia smiled. Her mother's concern, wrapped in humor, was a familiar comfort. "Sorry, been working a lot." "You working for 3 now, baby. You can't keep pushing yourself like this." Mia said nothing, her silence answering for her. "Have you thought more about coming home? Just until the babies are born?" "I can't, Mom. I need these jobs. If you leave now, what? That man has already taken everything from you in that city. What are you still holding on to?" "Pride," Mia thought, "the belief that I can fix this myself." "I'm handling it," she said firmly. "I've got 3 jobs now. The medical billing one might even turn permanent." Her mother's sigh carried years of wisdom and worry. "All right. But my offer stands. Your old room is waiting whenever you're ready." After hanging up, Mia opened one of the business books she'd borrowed. Tonight's selection, Building Wealth from Zero, a self-made millionaire's guide to financial independence. She read until her eyes burned, highlighting passages about investment strategies and compound interest that seemed galaxies away from her current reality. The ultrasound appointment in July changed everything. "Let's take a look at how this little one is doing," Dr. Chen said, moving the wand across Mia's gel-coated belly. The grainy image appeared on the screen, indecipherable to Mia's untrained eye. The doctor's brow furrowed in concentration. "Is something wrong?" Mia asked, panic rising in her throat. "No, not at all," Dr. Chen replied, adjusting the machine. "But I'm seeing— Yes, there it is. Ms. Davis, did you know you're carrying twins?" The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Twins?" Dr. Chen smiled, pointing to the screen. "Baby A and Baby B, both looking healthy, good heartbeats. I'm surprised this wasn't caught earlier. Twins, 2 babies, 2 of everything, twice the diapers, twice the formula, twice the responsibility." Mia's carefully calculated budget, already stretched to breaking, suddenly seemed like a cruel joke. As she left the clinic, clutching the ultrasound images, reality crashed down around her. She had 19 weeks until her due date. 19 weeks to somehow prepare for 2 babies instead of 1. That afternoon at Lou's, the exhaustion hit harder than usual. The diner was packed. A bus had broken down nearby, flooding the place with frustrated passengers. Mia moved between tables in a fog, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, forcing smiles. "Miss? Miss?" A customer's voice snapped her back to awareness. "I asked for more ketchup 5 minutes ago." "I'm sorry, sir. Right away." As she turned, the room tilted. The tray of dirty dishes in her hands clattered to the floor, silverware and broken plates scattering across the linoleum. Conversation stopped. All eyes turned to her. "Mia!" Rita's voice seemed distant. "Take 5, for God's sake." Somehow she made it to the employee bathroom, barely registering Rita's hands guiding her. Once inside, she slid down against the wall, head between her knees, fighting the darkness edging her vision. A knock came at the door. "Mia? It's Jen from the clinic next door. Rita called me over. Can I come in?" The door opened before she could answer. A woman in blue scrubs crouched beside her, checking her pulse with practiced efficiency. "When did you last eat something substantial?" the nurse asked, helping Mia to her feet. "Breakfast," Mia mumbled. "Toast." "And before that?" Mia couldn't remember. The nurse, Jen, led her to the clinic, insisting on a proper examination. There, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Mia's carefully constructed facade crumbled. She found herself telling this stranger everything: the pregnancy, James's rejection, the lost job, the 3 part-time positions that still weren't enough. "Honey, you can't continue like this," Jen said, handing her a tissue. "You're carrying 2 lives besides your own." "I don't have a choice," Mia sobbed. "We always have choices," the nurse replied gently. "They're not always easy ones, but they exist." Mia thought of her mother's offer, the safe harbor of her childhood home in Detroit, the support she'd been too proud to accept. That night, sitting on the edge of her bed in the dismal apartment, Mia finally dialed her mother's number. "Mom," she said when the line connected, her voice breaking. "I need to come home." She heard her mother's relief in the catch of her breath. "I'll come get you this weekend, baby. We'll figure it out together." "It's not permanent," Mia insisted, even as gratitude flooded through her. "I need a safe place to have my babies, and then I'm starting over. New York. I'm going to build something that no one can take away from me." "New York?" Her mother sounded surprised. "That's a long way from home." "That's the point," Mia said quietly. "In New York, the Thornton name won't mean anything. I can start fresh, build something of my own." A week later, Mia sat on a Greyhound bus bound for Detroit, watching Chicago's skyline recede in the distance. One hand rested on her belly, feeling the occasional flutter of movement from within. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn children. "First Detroit, then New York. We're going to build a life so magnificent that one day he'll see what he threw away." Leaving Chicago behind, Mia couldn't know that she would return 15 years later, not as a desperate young woman, but as a powerful entrepreneur about to acquire the very building where James Thornton had humiliated her. Leaving Chicago behind, Mia couldn't know that she would return 15 years later, not as a desperate young woman, but as a powerful entrepreneur about to acquire the very building where James Thornton had humiliated her. The contractions started at 2:17 in the morning. Mia had been dreaming of spreadsheets and business plans when a sharp pain jolted her awake. She lay still in her childhood bedroom, counting seconds between spasms as she'd learned in the prenatal classes at Detroit Community Hospital. 5 minutes apart. Too soon. She was only 36 weeks along. "Mom," she called, voice trembling as she switched on the bedside lamp. "It's time." What followed was a blur of hospital corridors, medical forms, and mounting fear. The doctor's words cut through her fog of pain. "Twins often come early, Ms. Davis. We need to monitor you closely." Hours stretched into an eternity of agony. Somewhere in the haze of pain, Mia heard a nurse mention complications, something about the first baby's position. The pain medication they'd finally given her dulled her senses but couldn't touch her terror. "I can't do this alone," she whispered, gripping her mother's hand as another contraction seized her. "You're not alone, baby," her mother answered fiercely. "I'm right here, and you're stronger than you know." When the moment came for delivery, Mia found reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. With each push, she channeled her rage, her determination, her love. The delivery room filled with urgent voices, monitors beeping, doctors issuing commands, her own primal screams. "First baby coming," the doctor announced. "One more big push, Mia." Her body complied, and suddenly a thin wail pierced the air. "It's a boy," someone said. Before she could process this miracle, another contraction gripped her. 15 minutes later, her daughter arrived, smaller than her brother but with surprisingly strong lungs. "Alexander and Olivia," Mia whispered when they placed the tiny blanket-wrapped bundles in her arms. She'd chosen the names months ago, Alexander for strength, Olivia for peace. Looking down at their perfect faces, exhaustion gave way to overwhelming love. "We made it. We're going to be okay." In that moment, with her newborns against her chest, the pain of James's rejection seemed distant. These children were hers, not Thornton's, but Davis's. She would give them everything he had denied them. "I promise," she whispered, kissing each tiny forehead. "I will never let anyone make you feel unwanted." The early weeks passed in a sleepless haze. Mia moved mechanically between feedings, diaper changes, and brief moments of rest. The twins' needs were relentless, when one settled, the other woke hungry or wet or simply needing comfort. Her mother proved invaluable, taking night shifts when Mia was too exhausted to stand, preparing meals that often went cold before Mia found time to eat them. The small two-bedroom house felt cramped with 4 occupants, but it was safe, warm, and free of the mold and danger that had characterized her Chicago apartment. "You need to eat properly," her mother scolded one afternoon, finding Mia half asleep on the couch while the babies napped. "You're nursing 2 hungry babies, that takes calories." Mia nodded absently, her mind already drifting to her dwindling savings. The medical bills had started arriving. Even with insurance, her portion was substantial. The $3,000 she'd managed to save would be gone within months. "I need to find work soon," she said, scrolling through job listings on her laptop. "Something I can do from home while the twins are small." Her mother frowned. "You just had major surgery delivering those babies. Your body needs time to heal." "Time is a luxury I can't afford, Mom." By the time the twins were 6 weeks old, Mia had established a new routine. During their morning nap, she applied for remote positions, data entry, virtual assistant work, anything that would bring in money. When they slept in the afternoon, she devoured business books and online courses on entrepreneurship and financial planning. At night, she worked on her long-term strategy, detailed plans for the business she would someday build. The rejections piled up. Without recent experience or references, she couldn't use Thornton Industries. Finding legitimate remote work proved nearly impossible. Her savings dwindled with each passing week. "Try Palmer Industries," her mother suggested one morning, setting a cup of tea beside Mia's laptop. "My friend Shirley's daughter works in HR there. They might need administrative help." The interview went well, until they asked for references from her last position. Mia provided Janet's contact information rather than the HR department at Thornton, but somehow the connection was made. "We'll be in touch," the interviewer said, his expression suddenly cool. He never called back. More rejections followed, from hospitals, insurance companies, even retail chains. It seemed James's influence reached further than she'd imagined, or perhaps her lack of references was simply too problematic. Finally, desperation drove her to CleanRight Services, a commercial cleaning company that needed night shift workers. The pay was minimum wage, but they didn't check references thoroughly, and the manager seemed uninterested in her employment gap. "You'll clean office buildings downtown, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3 nights a week," he explained, barely looking up from his clipboard. "It's independent work. You get your cart, your checklist, and your keys. Do the job right, and we don't bother each other." Leaving her babies at night tore at Mia's heart, but her mother assured her they would be fine. "Babies sleep at night anyway," she reasoned. "You can be with them all day, then work while they're dreaming." That first night, Mia kissed her sleeping twins goodbye with tears streaming down her face. By the time she returned at 7 in the morning, Olivia was awake and fussing for her first feeding. Mia nursed her while Alexander slept on, then collapsed into bed for a few precious hours before her son's hungry cries woke her. This became her life, caring for the twins during the day, cleaning offices at night, stealing sleep in fractured increments, studying business strategies during rare, quiet moments. Her body ached constantly from exhaustion, but her mind remained sharp, focused on the future she was determined to build. At night, as she emptied trash cans and wiped down desks belonging to executives who earned more in a day than she made in a month, Mia imagined her own office someday, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows and her name on the door. "One day," she whispered to herself as she polished a mahogany conference table at 3 in the morning, "I'll sit at the head of a table like this, and no one will ever make me feel small again." The twins grew rapidly, their personalities emerging more clearly each day. Alexander was methodical even as an infant, his dark eyes tracking movements with uncanny focus. Olivia was more expressive, quick to smile and equally quick to voice displeasure when things didn't suit her. At their 4-month checkup, the pediatrician remarked on their development. They're both tracking ahead of schedule, especially considering they were premature. You're doing an excellent job, Ms. Davis." The praise meant more than the doctor could know. In her darkest moments, when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, Mia questioned whether she was failing her children by working nights, by planning a move to New York, by harboring ambitions beyond simple survival. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table with her mother, the twins asleep in their second-hand cribs. "I've been saving," Mia said, pushing a spreadsheet across the table. 3 months from now, I should have enough for security deposit and 2 months' rent on a small place in Queens. Not a great neighborhood, but affordable. Her mother studied the numbers, then looked up with concern. "New York is expensive, Mia, even in Queens. And childcare for twins? You'd need a much better job than cleaning offices." "I have a plan." Mia pulled out another sheet of paper covered in neat handwriting. "NYU offers evening classes in business administration. There's a scholarship for single parents I think I could qualify for. And I've researched cleaning companies in Manhattan. They pay better than here, especially for overnight work in financial district buildings. And who'll watch my grandbabies while you're working and studying?" Mia hesitated. This was the part of her plan she'd been avoiding. "I was hoping maybe you'd consider coming with us, just for the first year or two, until I get established." Her mother's expression softened. "Leave Detroit? My friends? My church? Everything I know?" "I know it's a lot to ask," Mia said quickly. "But I can't do this without you, Mom. The twins need you. I need you." For a long moment, her mother said nothing, just studied Mia's face with the penetrating gaze that had seen through childhood fibs and teenage excuses. "You always were stubborn," she finally said, "just like your father. Once you set your mind to something." She sighed deeply. "I'll need to talk to Pastor Williams about renting out the house. No sense letting it sit empty." The relief that flooded through Mia was so intense she had to blink back tears. "Thank you, Mom. It won't be forever, I promise. Just until you're rich and famous, I know." Her mother smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I believe in you, Mia. Always have." The months that followed were a flurry of preparation. Mia sold anything they wouldn't need in New York: furniture, kitchen appliances, winter clothes that wouldn't be warm enough for East Coast winters. Every dollar went into her New York fund, carefully tracked on her ever-present spreadsheet. She researched neighborhoods, schools, public transportation routes. She joined online forums for single mothers in New York City, gathering tips on affordable childcare and family-friendly activities. At night, between cleaning tasks, she practiced interview answers for the NYU scholarship application. The twins celebrated their first Christmas bundled in matching red sweaters knitted by their grandmother, too young to understand the holiday but delighted by the colorful lights. Mia gave them each a small stuffed animal, an elephant for Alexander, a giraffe for Olivia, the only presents she could afford. By early January, with the twins approaching their 6-month milestone, everything was in place. The house was rented to a young couple from their church. Their belongings were packed into 4 suitcases and 6 boxes to be shipped ahead. Bus tickets to New York were purchased for January 15th, one way. The night before their departure, Mia stood in her emptied childhood bedroom, the twins sleeping peacefully in their portable cribs. Everything she owned, everything they owned, fit into depressingly little space. Yet somehow, she felt richer than she had in months. She had a plan, a destination, and most importantly, she had her children. At the bus station the next morning, her mother wiped away tears as they prepared to board. "You call me the minute you arrive, you hear? And every day after that." "I will, Mom. Thank you. For everything." "You're going to do great things, Mia Davis. Those babies are lucky to have you." She hugged Mia fiercely, then bent to kiss each sleeping twin. "You come back when you're rich and famous." "That's the plan," Mia replied, managing a smile despite her own tears. The journey was long, 9 hours with 2 transfers, the twins alternating between sleep and fussy periods that had Mia apologizing to nearby passengers. As the bus finally crossed into Manhattan, Mia held the babies up to the window. "That's where we're going to live," she whispered, though Alexander was busy chewing his fist and Olivia was more interested in pulling her mother's hair. "First Queens, then maybe Brooklyn, and someday, right there." She pointed to the gleaming skyscrapers of Midtown. "Someday we'll have an apartment with a view of the whole city." While the bus entered Manhattan, Mia didn't know that the small apartment in the Bronx where they were going would be only the first step on a ladder that would lead her to the top of the most powerful island in the world. While the bus entered Manhattan, Mia didn't know that the small apartment in the Bronx where they were going would be only the first step on a ladder that would lead her to the top of the most powerful island in the world. The security light flickered erratically as Mia made her way down the corridor of the Metropolitan Tower. 10 past 10 in the evening, and the building hummed with the quiet efficiency of night cleaners, security guards, and the occasional executive working late. Her navy uniform, with elite cleaning services embroidered on the pocket, was crisp despite the late hour. Beneath her cart of supplies, she'd tucked 3 business textbooks and a notepad, companions for the quiet moments between tasks. 6 months in New York had established a punishing routine. Her tiny 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, shared with her mother and the now 1-year-old twins, was merely a place to collapse between shifts. While her mother cared for Alexander and Olivia during the night, Mia meticulously cleaned the offices of Manhattan's elite, observing the architecture of power from the shadows. "Evening, George," she called to the security guard as she signed in, offering the smile that had already made her a favorite among the building staff. "Another late night, Mia?" George asked, pushing the logbook toward her. "Those bigwigs sure make a mess, don't they?" "Job security for us," she replied, signing her name with a flourish. "I'm on the 42nd floor tonight, executive suite." "The Dragon's Lair," George chuckled. "Ms. Westwood's working late again. Fair warning." Mia nodded gratefully. Eleanor Westwood, CEO of Westwood Marketing Solutions, had a reputation for demanding perfection from everyone, including the cleaning staff. Mia had never personally encountered her, always careful to clean around occupied offices without disturbing the occupants. The elevator ascended silently, giving Mia a moment to massage her temples. She'd been up since 5 that morning, feeding the twins before rushing to her NYU class on organizational leadership. The partial scholarship she'd secured covered 60% of her tuition, a miracle that still left her scrambling to pay the remainder while juggling rent, childcare costs when her mother needed a break, and the ever-present student loans. Sleep had become a distant memory, a luxury sacrificed on the altar of ambition. 4 hours on a good night, often broken by Olivia's nightmares or Alexander's teething pain, yet somehow she maintained a 3.8 GPA in her classes and had already been promoted to senior cleaner at Elite, responsible for the most prestigious floors. The 42nd floor was silent when Mia arrived, pushing her cart quietly across the plush carpet. The layout was familiar by now, a central reception area surrounded by glass-walled offices, with the corner suite reserved for the CEO. Light spilled from beneath that door, confirming George's warning. Methodically, Mia began with the empty offices, dusting shelves, emptying trash bins, and vacuuming carpets. As she worked, she absorbed details: organizational charts pinned to walls, strategy documents carelessly left on desks, marketing plans sketched on whiteboards. Each office told a story of the company's structure, its priorities, its culture. "Knowledge is power," she whispered to herself, a mantra repeated on nights when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. In Office 12, belonging to the marketing director, Mia paused before a bookshelf lined with industry texts. One title caught her eye: Disruptive Marketing Strategies for Emerging Brands. Glancing at her watch, 11:35, she calculated. The office was spotless, and she had 15 minutes before she needed to move to the next one. Carefully, she removed the book, settled into the ergonomic chair, and began reading, absorbing principles of brand positioning and market penetration. So engrossed was she in a chapter about leveraging digital platforms that she didn't hear the door open. Most people who clean my offices don't simultaneously study my executives' books. Mia jumped to her feet, the book nearly slipping from her grasp. Eleanor Westwood stood in the doorway, an elegant woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and piercing green eyes. She wore a charcoal suit despite the late hour, not a wrinkle in sight. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Westwood," Mia stammered, returning the book to its shelf. "I was just reading about disruptive marketing strategies," Eleanor finished, stepping into the office. "At nearly midnight while working your second or third job of the day, I imagine." Mia swallowed hard. "I'll finish cleaning right away." "That's not why I stopped." Eleanor studied her with undisguised curiosity. "You've been cleaning this floor for 3 months. My assistant tells me you're the only person who properly organizes her desk and remembers to refill the business card holder." "Details matter," Mia replied automatically. "Indeed they do." Eleanor gestured to the book Mia had been reading. "That's a graduate-level text on marketing strategy. Light reading for you?" Something in the woman's tone, curiosity rather than accusation, gave Mia courage. "I'm studying business administration at NYU, evening program. Marketing is my focus area." Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. "While working nights and, let me guess, raising a family?" Mia nodded. "Twins. They're 1. "Ambitious," Eleanor remarked, settling into a chair across from the desk. "And clearly intelligent. Tell me what you think of Kellerman's theory of market disruption, the chapter you were reading." It was a test, and Mia recognized it instantly. Taking a deep breath, she articulated her thoughts on the author's framework, where it succeeded and where it fell short based on her own observations of real-world marketing campaigns. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When Mia finished, the CEO was silent for a long moment. "You have remarkable insight for someone who hasn't worked in marketing," she finally said, "and excellent critical thinking skills. You're wasted emptying trash cans, Ms. Davis. Mia Davis. Ms. Davis." Eleanor stood, smoothing her already immaculate suit. "I rarely do this, but I'm going to make an exception. Have coffee with me tomorrow. 9 o'clock, downstairs cafe." Mia hesitated, mentally calculating her schedule. She had class at 11, and her mother had a doctor's appointment at 10. "I can manage 8:30, she offered. Eleanor smiled for the first time. 8:30 it is. Don't be late, and don't clean my office tonight. I'll still be working for hours." The next morning, Mia arrived at the cafe at 8:25, having been awake since 4 to feed the twins, help her mother prepare for her appointment, and change into the only professional outfit she owned, a navy skirt suit purchased from a thrift store and tailored carefully by hand. Eleanor was already there, immaculate in cream silk, reading the Wall Street Journal over an espresso. She looked up as Mia approached, gesturing to the chair opposite. "Punctual, good sign." She folded the newspaper aside. "Tell me your story, Mia Davis. The real one, not the sanitized version." Mia hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "I was an executive assistant in Chicago, got pregnant, lost my job, moved to New York for a fresh start. I'm determined to create a stable future for my children." "And the father?" "Not in the picture." Eleanor nodded, accepting this without judgment. "And your long-term goal? Beyond survival?" "I want to build something," Mia said, her voice gaining strength. "My own company eventually. Something sustainable that creates real value and treats people with dignity." "Ambitious," Eleanor repeated her assessment from the night before. "And specific enough to be genuine, vague enough to be flexible. I like that." She sipped her espresso, studying Mia over the rim. "You need a better job than night cleaner. And a mentor." Mia blinked, uncertain she'd heard correctly. "My assistant is leaving next month, moving to London with her fiancé. The position requires organization, discretion, and the ability to anticipate needs before they're articulated. Based on how you've handled my executive floor, you possess at least 2 of those qualities. And the third? Discretion? Eleanor smiled thinly. We'll see. The salary is $65,000 annually, with benefits including health insurance and tuition assistance for relevant continuing education. Hours are long and sometimes unpredictable. Can your childcare situation accommodate that? Mia's heart raced. $65,000 was more than triple her current income. With benefits and tuition assistance, she could potentially move to a better apartment, perhaps even start saving for her future business. My mother lives with us, she said carefully. She cares for the twins while I work and study. It would be an adjustment, but we could make it work. Good. Eleanor withdrew a business card from her purse, sliding it across the table. Email me your resume today. Formal interview next week with HR, but consider it a formality. I've been watching your work for months. People reveal their true character in how they perform tasks they think no one notices. Mia took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. Why are you doing this for me? Eleanor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. 25 years ago, I was a single mother with a business degree and no connections, scraping by as a telemarketer while my son slept in a drawer because I couldn't afford a crib. She stood, gathering her newspaper and purse. Someone took a chance on me. Now I'm taking one on you. Don't make me regret it. With that, she was gone, leaving Mia clutching the business card like a talisman. The changes that followed came rapidly. The assistant position materialized exactly as promised. Mia gave notice at Elite Cleaning, moved the family to a modest but safe 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, and transferred to daytime classes at NYU, now substantially covered by Westwood's tuition assistance program. Working for Eleanor proved as challenging as expected. The CEO demanded excellence, kept punishing hours, and offered criticism far more readily than praise. But she also provided something Mia had never experienced, a front-row seat to female leadership at the highest level. From Eleanor, she learned how to command a room without raising her voice, how to negotiate without revealing her bottom line, and how to recognize opportunities that others missed. Most evenings, after the official workday ended, Eleanor would invite Mia to stay while she reviewed strategies or prepared for major client presentations. "Watch and learn," she would say, walking Mia through her thought process as she dismantled a competitor's campaign or restructured a failing product line. On rare weekends, Mia would bring the twins to the office when Eleanor needed emergency assistance. Far from being annoyed, the CEO seemed fascinated by the children, especially Alexander's methodical approach to building blocks and Olivia's precocious vocabulary. "They have your focus," Eleanor observed one Saturday, watching Alexander construct an elaborate tower. "And your determination." "They're all I have," Mia replied simply. "No," Eleanor corrected, her gaze sharp. "They're all you started with. What you're building now, your education, your experience, your network, that belongs to you as well. Remember that." While Eleanor Bennett desenhava un plano de carrera in a cafeteria napkin, Mia didn't imagine that in 8 years that same woman would be on her board of directors, helping her evaluate the offer to buy Thornton Industries. While Eleanor Bennett sketched a career plan on a cafeteria napkin, Mia couldn't imagine that in 8 years that same woman would be on her board of directors, helping her evaluate the offer to buy Thornton Industries. The administrative position with Eleanor proved transformative, not just financially but intellectually. After 18 months as her assistant, Mia had absorbed more practical business knowledge than in all her university courses combined. Eleanor's mentorship extended beyond office hours, occasionally inviting Mia to industry events where she could observe networking in action while remaining in the background, taking notes and watching. "Always study the room before entering it," Eleanor advised one evening as they prepared for a marketing association gala. "Identify the power players, notice who talks to whom, who others defer to. Real business happens in these spaces, not in boardrooms." By the time the twins turned 4, Mia had been promoted to administrative manager, overseeing a small team while still reporting directly to Eleanor. The promotion came with another salary increase, allowing her to move the family to a more spacious apartment in Astoria with a small balcony where the children could play. Alexander and Olivia were thriving, their distinct personalities becoming more pronounced each day. Alexander, methodical and precise, could spend hours constructing elaborate buildings with his blocks, never satisfied until every piece aligned perfectly. Olivia, verbally precocious and socially confident, already demonstrated a gift for storytelling, crafting elaborate tales for her brother's amusement. "Tell me the princess story again," Alexander would request, arranging his blocks while his sister performed dramatically beside him. "Once upon a time," Olivia would begin, her voice adopting the theatrical cadence she'd learned from their grandmother's bedtime readings, "there was a brave queen who built a castle all by herself because the king was mean and stupid." Mia would listen from the kitchen, heart aching at how her children had unconsciously crafted a fairy tale from fragments of their reality. They rarely asked about their father anymore, seemingly satisfied with her careful explanation that he wasn't ready to be a daddy and had made his choice to live separately. Late at night, after tucking the twins into bed, Mia maintained her ritual of documenting their milestones in a leather-bound journal. Alexander's first complete sentence, Olivia's spontaneous rendition of the alphabet song, their synchronized laughter at a shared joke that only they understood. "Today, Alexander built a tower taller than himself," she wrote one evening. "He has your determination, James." And Olivia asked a question about why leaves change color that left me researching chlorophyll at midnight. "She has your curiosity, though I hate to admit it." She never intended to share these observations with James. The journal was her way of processing the complicated emotions of raising his children alone. In her most honest moments, she acknowledged the sadness she felt for what the twins had lost. Not just a father, but an entire branch of their family tree, grandparents and cousins they would never know. During her third year with Westwood Marketing, Mia began noticing problems with the cleaning service the company employed. Complaints from executives about missed areas, supplies running out, and chemical smells lingering in conference rooms had become commonplace. "The service has gone downhill since they were acquired by that conglomerate," Eleanor remarked one evening, frowning at a dusty bookshelf. "They've cut staff, switched to cheaper products, classic cost-cutting that sacrifices quality." Mia nodded, remembering her nights as a cleaner. Most of these companies treat their workers terribly. Minimum wage, no benefits, punishing schedules. When I worked for Elite, I knew cleaners who handled dangerous chemicals without proper protection. Some developed chronic respiratory problems. "Unfortunately, that's standard in the industry," Eleanor replied, returning to her computer. But the conversation planted a seed in Mia's mind. Over the following weeks, she began researching the commercial cleaning industry more thoroughly, identifying its systemic problems: exploitative labor practices, toxic cleaning products, inconsistent service quality, and virtually no technological innovation. "There's an opportunity here," she murmured one night, surrounded by industry reports and market analyses. The twins slept peacefully in their shared bedroom while her mother dozed in front of the television. The next morning, she requested a meeting with Eleanor, arriving with a carefully organized folder of research. "The commercial cleaning industry is broken," she began, sliding a market analysis across the desk. "But it's also essential and recession-proof. Every corporate building in America needs cleaning services." Eleanor listened without interruption as Mia outlined the industry's problems and her vision for a solution: a cleaning company built on fundamentally different values: ecological sustainability, worker dignity, and technological accountability. "Interesting," Eleanor said when Mia finished. "But why are you telling me this? Westwood is a marketing firm, not a venture capital company." "Because I'm going to build this company," Mia replied with quiet confidence. "Not today or tomorrow, but it's my plan, and I wanted your advice on how to prepare." A smile tugged at Eleanor's lips. "I've been waiting 3 years for you to tell me your long-term plan. I was beginning to worry you didn't have one." She leaned forward. "You'll need experience in operations management, not just administration, and financial literacy beyond what your degree provides." Within a month, Mia's role expanded to include operations oversight for Westwood's New York office. She immersed herself in learning supply chain management, vendor relations, and facilities coordination, all valuable skills for her future venture. The catalyst arrived unexpectedly during a meeting with a dissatisfied client whose offices Mia had toured that morning. "The place was a mess," complained Jonathan Pierce, CEO of a mid-sized tech company. "Conference room still had coffee stains from yesterday. Bathrooms smelled terrible. My team can't work in those conditions." Eleanor glanced at Mia, who had prepared a comprehensive response. "We've scheduled an emergency deep clean tonight, Mr. Pierce, and we're reviewing alternative cleaning vendors," Mia explained professionally. After the meeting, Pierce lingered, approaching Mia directly. "You seem to understand the problem better than most. The current vendor charges premium rates for subpar service. I'd pay double for someone who actually delivered quality." "What specifically would you want from an ideal cleaning service?" Mia asked, seizing the opportunity. Pierce's answer was surprisingly detailed. Eco-friendly products that didn't leave chemical smells, consistent staff who knew the building layout, transparent pricing, and accountability for missed areas. "If you know someone who could provide that," he added as he left, "I'd sign a contract tomorrow." That evening, Mia sat at her small dining table, the twins asleep after their bath time routine, and began drafting a business plan. Years of observation, research, and planning coalesced into a clear vision. Clean Slate Enterprises, a commercial cleaning company committed to environmental sustainability, fair labor practices, and technological innovation. For weeks, she refined the plan during evenings and weekends, creating financial projections, marketing strategies, and operational frameworks. When it was ready, she presented it first to Eleanor, whose critical eye found weaknesses Mia hadn't considered. "Your profit margins are too thin in the first year," Eleanor noted, circling numbers on the spreadsheet. "And you haven't accounted for employee turnover realistically. But the core concept is sound, disrupting an industry that's become complacent." With Eleanor's guidance, Mia revised her plan, then secured a meeting with two potential investors Eleanor had introduced, former clients who respected her judgment. The morning of the presentation, Mia dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, now a tailored charcoal suit purchased with her manager's salary rather than second-hand finds. Her mother wished her luck while helping the twins with breakfast. "Remember, you're not just asking for money," Eleanor had advised. "You're inviting them to be part of something transformative. Speak with conviction." The presentation took place in a small conference room at Westwood. Mia stood before Eleanor and the two investors, Patricia Goldstein, a retired pharmaceutical executive, and Marcus Webb, who had recently sold his software company. "The commercial cleaning industry generates $85 billion annually in the United States alone," Mia began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Yet it remains plagued by low wages, toxic chemicals, and inconsistent service. Clean Slate Enterprises will revolutionize this essential industry through three core principles." As she presented her vision, environmentally safe products, living wages with benefits for employees, and proprietary tracking software to ensure quality, she could see the investors' interest growing. When she reached the financial projections, showing modest but steady growth based on conservative client acquisition estimates, Patricia began taking detailed notes. "You're essentially proposing to be the anti-corporate cleaning company," Marcus observed when she finished. "Paying more, charging more, but delivering exceptional value." "Precisely," Mia confirmed. "Clean Slate isn't just a cleaning company. It's a values statement. Our clients will choose us because they share our commitment to environmental and social responsibility." 3 days later, Mia received the call she'd been hoping for. Patricia and Marcus, along with Eleanor, were prepared to invest $25,000 in exchange for 22% equity in Clean Slate Enterprises. With trembling hands, Mia accepted the investment check at a small signing ceremony in Eleanor's office. "I won't disappoint you," she promised, the weight of responsibility and opportunity pressing equally on her shoulders. The first month of building Clean Slate was a whirlwind of activity. Mia interviewed candidates for her initial team, prioritizing single mothers like herself who needed flexible schedules and stable income. She researched and sourced eco-friendly cleaning products, purchased uniforms made from recycled materials, and leased a single hybrid van with the company logo, a stylized broom sweeping away a shadow. Jonathan Pierce became their first client, signing a one-year contract after Mia personally presented Clean Slate's service model. For the inaugural cleaning, Mia worked alongside her 3 employees, demonstrating exactly the standard she expected. "We don't just clean spaces," she explained as they gathered in Pierce's empty office after hours. "We restore dignity to the environments where people work and to the profession of cleaning itself." 2 weeks later, Clean Slate held its first official company meeting in a small rented office space in Brooklyn. The team had grown to 5 with a waiting list of potential clients referred by Pierce. "Our mission goes beyond cleaning," Mia told her small but dedicated staff. "We're here to clean not just spaces but the reputation of this industry. Everyone who works for Clean Slate will receive fair wages, health benefits, and opportunity for advancement. In return, we deliver excellence without compromise." That evening, Mia returned to their apartment later than usual, finding the twins already asleep. She stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching their peaceful breathing in the soft glow of the nightlight. "Mommy's building something special for you," she whispered, her heart full with the day's achievements and tomorrow's possibilities. In the small, improvised office of their first client, Mia couldn't imagine that in just 5 years she would be commanding a fleet of blue vans with the Clean Slate logo in every district of New York, or that in 10 years her company would be valued at more than $300 million. In the small, improvised office of their first client, Mia couldn't imagine that in just 5 years she would be commanding a fleet of blue vans with the Clean Slate logo in every district of New York, or that in 10 years her company would be valued at more than $300 million. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for Clean Slate's first real office space felt momentous despite its modest scale. 20 people gathered in the sunlit Brooklyn storefront, Mia's small team of now 12 employees, her mother beaming with pride, 6-year-old Alexander and Olivia bouncing with excitement, and the 3 investors who had taken a chance on her vision 2 years earlier. "With this ribbon, we cut away the past and embrace our future," Mia announced, her voice steady as she faced the small crowd. The oversized scissors felt weighty in her hands, symbolizing the responsibility she carried. The walls behind her were painted the signature Clean Slate blue, the company's minimalist logo emblazoned in silver. As the ribbon fell, Alexander and Olivia rushed forward, racing through the newly opened doorway as if christening the space with their energy. Mia watched them weave between desks, their laughter echoing in what had once been just figures on a business plan. "You've built something remarkable in just 2 years," Eleanor said, appearing at Mia's side. 15 corporate clients, 12 employees, and now a proper headquarters. "This is just the beginning," Mia replied, watching as her operations manager demonstrated their newly developed tracking application to interested guests. The application had been her first major innovation, a digital system that allowed clients to verify exactly when spaces were cleaned, which products were used, and by whom. Transparency that had never existed in an industry notorious for its opacity. "The app is ready for beta testing next week," Mia explained to a cluster of clients. "Each cleaner will log their work in real time with before and after photos uploaded directly to your company portal. No more wondering if your office was actually serviced overnight." Jonathan Pierce, their first and still most enthusiastic client, nodded approvingly. "This is exactly why we chose Clean Slate. You're not just cleaning offices, you're reinventing the entire approach." 3 months after the office opening, Mia stood in a parking lot watching as the first fleet of Clean Slate vans arrived, 5 hybrid vehicles wrapped in the company's blue color scheme with the logo prominently displayed. Each van represented a significant investment, but the branding opportunity was priceless. Mobile billboards that would traverse Manhattan daily. "These aren't just vans," she told her gathered team. "They're statements. When people see these vehicles, they'll see a company that cares about environmental impact, that chooses hybrid engines when competitors use gas guzzlers. Everything we do reflects our values." Inside each van, eco-friendly cleaning products were meticulously organized in compartments built to Mia's specifications. The uniforms hanging ready for the morning shift were made from recycled materials, comfortable yet professional, a far cry from the cheap polyester most cleaning staff were forced to wear. By the end of Clean Slate's 3rd year, Mia gathered her now 20-person team for their quarterly meeting, nervous energy coursing through her veins. The projector displayed financial charts that even 6 months earlier would have seemed impossibly optimistic. "As of today, we've achieved profitability ahead of schedule," she announced, watching faces light up around the conference table, "which means we're implementing the employee profit-sharing program effective immediately." The room erupted in applause and gasps. Many of her employees, primarily women, many single mothers, had never worked for a company that offered benefits, let alone shared profits. "Each of you will receive quarterly bonuses based on company performance," Mia continued, "because Clean Slate's success belongs to all of us. This company was built on the principle that the people who do the work should share in the rewards." That evening, Mia unlocked the door to their new apartment in a doorman building in Queens. The space felt cavernous compared to their previous home. 3 bedrooms, a proper dining room, and windows that flooded the rooms with natural light. "We're home!" she called, hearing the twins racing from the living room where her mother had been supervising their homework. "Mom, look what we did!" Alexander thrust a paper toward her, his handwriting precise even at 7 years old. A perfect score on his mathematics test, with a handwritten note from his teacher. "Exceptional understanding of concepts beyond grade level." "And I got picked to read my story at assembly," Olivia added, not to be outdone. "Ms. Wilson said it was the most creative in the class." Mia gathered them both in a hug, breathing in the scent of their shampoo and the faint trace of the cookies her mother had obviously baked. "I'm so proud of you both. Let's celebrate with dinner out tonight." Later, after the twins were asleep in their new rooms, Alexander finally having a space for his growing collection of engineering toys, Olivia surrounded by books on her own shelves, Mia sat at her desk reviewing her children's latest school reports. Both were excelling academically, their teachers' comments filled with praise for their focus, creativity, and maturity. From her drawer, she withdrew a folder containing newspaper clippings about Thornton Industries. She had maintained this habit over the years, tracking from afar the company James still led. The most recent article detailed a failed expansion attempt into Asian markets, with analysts questioning the leadership's strategic vision. "Your legacy is struggling while ours thrives," she whispered to the grainy photo of James at a corporate event. He looked older, his face harder. Success apparently extracted its own price. Mia closed the folder, returning it to its hiding place. The twins never asked about their father anymore, seemingly satisfied with the narrative she had carefully constructed, that he simply wasn't ready for family responsibility. She had shared nothing of his cruelty, his rejection, wanting to protect them from that pain. As Clean Slate's 5th anniversary approached, Mia found herself invited to speak at a business innovation conference. Standing before an audience of entrepreneurs and industry leaders, she shared the company's remarkable journey. "We entered an industry that most considered unglamorous and unchanged for decades," she explained, her confidence evident in her posture and measured tone. "We asked a simple question. What if cleaning services were built around values rather than merely profit? What if we respected both our employees and our environment?" The presentation showcased Clean Slate's growth. 50 corporate clients across New York City, 45 employees all receiving living wages and benefits, a fleet of 15 branded hybrid vans, and proprietary software now licensed to other service companies. Financial projections displayed on the screen revealed a company valuation approaching $50 million. The creation of the New Beginning Foundation marked another milestone in Clean Slate's 6th year. Mia signed the incorporation documents with Eleanor and her mother as witnesses, establishing a non-profit organization dedicated to providing scholarships and subsidized childcare for single mothers pursuing education or entrepreneurship. "This foundation completes the circle," Mia explained at the small launch event. "When I was a single mother struggling to survive, education was my ladder out of poverty. Now we can extend that ladder to others." The foundation's first initiative provided full scholarships to 10 single mothers enrolled in business programs across New York City colleges, along with stipends for childcare during class hours. Mia interviewed each recipient personally, seeing reflections of her younger self in their determination. Alexander and Olivia, now 9 years old, attended the foundation's launch, dressed in matching blue outfits that complemented the clean slate colors. They listened attentively as their mother described her journey, though Mia carefully edited the narrative, omitting James entirely. That evening, as they rode home in the company car Mia now afforded, Olivia asked the question Mia had been dreading. "Mom, why do we never talk about our dad?" The question hung in the air of the vehicle. Alexander looked up from his tablet, equally interested in the answer. Mia had prepared for this moment, rehearsing her response to strike the delicate balance between truth and protection. "Your father wasn't ready to be a parent when you were born," she said carefully. "He made his choice, and we've made our life." "Did he not want us?" Alexander asked, his analytical mind seeking clarity. Mia chose her words with precision. "He wasn't prepared for the responsibility of children. Some people aren't. That's about his limitations, not about your worth." "Do you ever talk to him?" Olivia pressed. "No, we haven't spoken since before you were born." "Does he know we're smart?" Alexander's question carried a vulnerability that broke Mia's heart. "I'm sure he knows," Mia lied gently. "But what matters is that I know how brilliant you both are, and I'm here to see every amazing thing you do." The conversation shifted to other topics, but that night, alone in her bedroom, Mia nearly broke down. She had come so close to telling them everything about James's cruel rejection, his threat to destroy her career, the way he had dismissed them all as insufficient for his world. But seeing their innocent faces, she couldn't bring herself to burden them with that knowledge. "Maybe when they're older," she whispered to herself, "when they're strong enough to understand it wasn't about them." By the time the twins turned 12, Clean Slate had expanded beyond New York into New Jersey and Connecticut. The company employed over 100 people, maintained contracts with more than 80 corporate clients, and had been featured in Business Week as a model of sustainable business practices. The move to their Manhattan apartment coincided with this expansion, a 3-bedroom unit in a luxury building with views of Central Park from the living room. The night they moved in, Mia stood on the terrace gazing at the city lights, allowing herself a rare moment of pride. "Is this what you imagined?" her mother asked, joining her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Not even close," Mia admitted, accepting the glass. "I wanted stability, respect, a future for the twins. I never dreamed it would become this." "That's because you were too busy working to dream," her mother replied. "You were too focused on the next step to see how far the path could lead." That night, while the twins slept in their new rooms and her mother retired to the guest suite that was now permanently hers, Mia stood on her terrace overlooking Manhattan's skyline. Somewhere in that glittering landscape were the offices where she had once cleaned floors after midnight, dreaming of something better while the executives slept. Now she was the executive. Clean Slate occupied an entire floor in a midtown building. Her children attended prestigious private schools on merit scholarships. The foundation she had created helped dozens of women escape the same circumstances she had faced. "You said I wasn't enough," she whispered to the city lights, thinking of James and his cruel dismissal all those years ago. You were wrong about everything. Observing the Manhattan skyline from her terrace, Mia didn't know that news of her meteoric rise would soon reach James Thornton's ears, who would watch with growing unease as the name Clean Slate appeared increasingly frequently in business publications. Observing the Manhattan skyline from her terrace, Mia didn't know that news of her meteoric rise would soon reach James Thornton's ears, who would watch with growing unease as the name Clean Slate appeared increasingly frequently in business publications. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Mia's 40th floor office, illuminating the polished surface of her desk where the quarterly reports awaited her review. At 39, Mia Johnson commanded a view of Manhattan that still occasionally took her breath away. Not just the physical vista of skyscrapers and distant rivers, but the metaphorical perspective of someone who had conquered a city that once seemed determined to break her. She adjusted her tailored blazer, Armani, purchased without a second thought about the price tag, and turned from the window to face the day ahead. Clean Slate Enterprises now occupied the entire floor, with $300 million in annual revenue and over 3,200 employees across the eastern seaboard. The small cleaning company that began with 3 employees and a single client had transformed into an empire that was redefining an entire industry. Her phone buzzed with a message from her executive assistant. "Board meeting materials ready for your review. Eleanor called. Wants to discuss the Thornton Industries research before tomorrow's meeting." Mia's stomach tightened at the name. 15 years had passed since James Thornton had dismissed her from his life, yet seeing his family name still produced a visceral reaction. The difference now was that it no longer triggered fear or shame, only a cool, calculated focus. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Mom, got a minute?" Alexander stood in the doorway, laptop tucked under his arm, his 15-year-old frame already approaching 6 feet. He had James's height and jawline, but his eyes, thoughtful, kind, analytical, were entirely his own. "For you?" "Always," Mia smiled, gesturing toward the seating area where she conducted her less formal meetings. "Shouldn't you be in calculus right now?" "Free period," he explained, settling onto the couch and opening his laptop. "I wanted to show you the latest stats on TimeLock. We just crossed 200,000 downloads yesterday." Pride swelled in Mia's chest as Alexander pulled up analytics for the time management application he'd coded last year. What had begun as a tool to organize his own academic schedule had quickly gained popularity among students nationwide, earning write-ups in tech blogs and attention from venture capitalists. "The retention rate is impressive," Mia noted, studying the graphs. 87% of users remain active after 30 days. "That's after implementing the study pattern recognition algorithm," Alexander explained, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "The app now suggests optimal study times based on previous productivity patterns." Mia watched her son explain complex coding concepts with easy confidence, marveling at the young man he was becoming. Alexander had inherited her drive but channeled it into technology and mathematics, already taking college-level courses and being courted by MIT's early admission program. "Have you thought more about the VC offer?" she asked, referring to the seed funding a Silicon Valley firm had recently offered for TimeLock's expansion. Alexander closed his laptop, suddenly looking very much like the teenager he was beneath his precocious achievements. "I'm leaning toward declining. I want to maintain control of the development, at least through the next major update." "A wise choice," Mia nodded. "Never surrender control unless the terms make it undeniably worthwhile." It was a lesson she had learned building Clean Slate, turning down numerous acquisition offers that would have diluted her vision. Their conversation shifted to the upcoming charity gala where Mia would receive the Entrepreneur of the Year award from the New York Chamber of Commerce. "You are going to attend, right?" Alexander asked. "Olivia said you might skip it for the Tokyo client call." "I rescheduled Tokyo," Mia confirmed. "The award visibility is too valuable to miss." Besides, the Thornton Industries is among the sponsors, and it would be strategic to establish contact. I heard they're expanding to New York and will need cleaning services for their new office. Alexander nodded absently, the name Thornton meaning nothing to him beyond another potential client. Mia had never revealed that the company bore the name of his biological father. In 15 years, she had maintained the careful narrative that the twins' father simply wasn't prepared for parenthood, a partial truth that spared them the cruelty of complete rejection. After Alexander left for his next class, Mia turned to the research her team had compiled on Thornton Industries. The company had struggled in recent years, losing market share to more innovative competitors. 3 consecutive years of declining profits had prompted a strategic pivot, expansion into the New York market where they had previously maintained only a minimal presence. "Ms. Johnson, your 11 o'clock is here," her assistant announced through the intercom. The morning proceeded with its usual rhythm of meetings, decisions, and strategic planning. At 1:30, Mia crossed the hallway to Olivia's office, a small space she had insisted on providing for her daughter's internship project. Unlike Alexander, who avoided the spotlight, Olivia thrived in social and academic arenas equally. Captain of her school's debate team, editor of the student newspaper, and recently selected as a finalist in a prestigious essay competition, she balanced intellectual pursuits with a natural charisma that drew people to her. "Mom!" Olivia looked up from her computer, dark curls framing a face that mirrored Mia's own at that age. "I just submitted my draft of the Foundation's annual report. Can you review it this afternoon?" The New Beginning Foundation had become Olivia's passion project. Though only 15, she had convinced Mia to let her document the Foundation's impact through interviews with scholarship recipients, creating compelling narratives that had significantly boosted donations. "I'll review it tonight," Mia promised. "How's the Harvard application coming along?" Olivia's expression brightened further. "Just finalizing my personal statement. Ms. Winters says my academic record is strong enough for early consideration, especially with the newspaper editorials and the debate championship." "They'd be fortunate to have you," Mia said sincerely. After returning to her office, Mia opened her calendar to confirm the week's appointments. The Chamber of Commerce event was scheduled for Friday evening at the Plaza Hotel. The notification included a recently updated list of sponsors, and seeing Thornton Industries listed as a platinum-level sponsor sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. For years, she had tracked James Thornton's career from a distance, collecting articles about Thornton Industries like artifacts from another life. She knew he had married a Chicago socialite 6 years ago, that they had no children, that his father's company had gradually lost its innovative edge under his leadership. Now, according to her sources, James himself would be relocating to New York to oversee the company's expansion, a desperate move to reverse their declining fortunes. The irony was not lost on Mia. The man who had once dismissed her as insignificant would soon enter her territory, possibly unaware that she had built a business empire in the very city where he hoped to salvage his own. The thought brought a smile to her lips as she returned to reviewing the quarterly projections. Thursday evening found Mia maintaining her disciplined routine, up at 5 for yoga, breakfast with the twins before their school day, then immersed in preparation for Friday's award ceremony. Her speech had been carefully crafted to highlight Clean Slate's values while subtly emphasizing her journey from night cleaner to CEO. "You should mention your background more explicitly," Eleanor suggested during their phone call. Now 72, Eleanor had retired from active management but maintained her position on Clean Slate's board of directors. "Your story is powerful, Mia. From single mother cleaning offices to running a $300 million company, it resonates." "I prefer to let Clean Slate's success speak for itself," Mia replied, though she understood Eleanor's point. "The focus should be on our innovations and impact, not my personal narrative." "The personal is what people remember," Eleanor countered. "But it's your moment. Shape it as you see fit." Friday morning arrived with a flurry of activity. The twins left early for school activities while Mia attended a series of meetings that culminated in a strategy session with her executive team regarding the potential Thornton Industries contract. Their New York office will occupy 12 floors in the Lexington Tower. Her business development director explained, "If we secure the contract, it would be our largest single-building client to date." "Prepare our premium proposal," Mia instructed. "Full service, all eco-friendly options, including our new air quality monitoring system. Price it competitively but not aggressively. We want to be chosen for our quality, not our discount." By late afternoon, Mia returned to her penthouse to prepare for the evening's ceremony. She selected a sapphire blue dress that complemented her complexion, a far cry from the second-hand clothes she had once worn to job interviews after James's rejection. Her natural hair, which she had once straightened to conform to corporate expectations, now formed a crown of elegant curls that framed her face. As her car service navigated toward the Plaza Hotel, Mia reviewed her acceptance speech one final time, then set her notes aside. Tonight represented more than an award. It was a milestone on a journey that had begun in the darkest moment of her life. The Plaza's ballroom glittered with New York's business elite, CEOs, entrepreneurs, investors, and media personalities mingling beneath crystal chandeliers. Mia entered with practiced confidence, immediately greeted by admirers and colleagues eager to congratulate her before the official announcement. "The woman of the hour," said Jonathan Pierce, now CEO of a tech conglomerate and still a loyal clean-slate client. "Though I'm not surprised, you've been revolutionizing the industry for years." Mia navigated the crowd with graceful efficiency, exchanging business cards and building connections while scanning the room for familiar faces. She was deep in conversation with the president of a national bank when she felt it, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Turning slightly, her gaze swept across the room and collided with a pair of blue eyes she hadn't seen in 15 years but would recognize anywhere. James Thornton stood across the ballroom, a glass of whiskey frozen halfway to his lips, staring at her with undisguised shock. 15 years had added gray at his temples and lines around his eyes, but the essential James remained. The aristocratic posture, the aura of entitlement, the cold calculation that had once dismantled her world. For an instant, Mia felt a ghost of her former self, the vulnerable young woman desperately seeking validation. Then it vanished, replaced by the hard-earned confidence of the empire builder she had become. "If you'll excuse me," she said to her companions with a practiced smile, "I need to greet an old colleague." Walking toward James with measured steps, Mia observed his body language, the tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckled grip on his whiskey glass, the flicker of something like fear in his eyes as she approached. "James Thornton," she said calmly, extending her hand as though they were mere business acquaintances. "What a coincidence to find you in New York." "Mia?" His voice betrayed his shock. How did you?" "Mia Johnson, CEO of Clean Slate Enterprises," she replied, indicating the name badge on her chest. "Apparently you don't follow the commercial services sector very closely." "Johnson?" His brow furrowed. "You married?" "I took my mother's maiden name," Mia explained with a small smile. "I found it more appropriate for building my legacy." Before James could respond, the Master of Ceremonies announced the beginning of the awards presentation. With a polite nod, Mia excused herself, leaving him visibly disturbed as she made her way to her assigned table near the stage. As the presenter began describing the Entrepreneur of the Year finalists, Mia felt a peculiar sense of calm. 15 years ago, James Thornton had told her she wasn't enough, not accomplished enough, not connected enough, not white enough for his world. Now she would receive one of the city's highest business honors while he watched from the audience, his own company struggling to survive. While the presenter called the nominees for Entrepreneur of the Year, Mia's photo appeared on the screen along with her accomplishments. Built a company valued at more than $300 million starting from zero, employs over 3,000 people, pioneered sustainable practices, created scholarship programs for single mothers. James observed, paling with each achievement mentioned. When Mia was announced as the winner, the applause was deafening. In her acceptance speech, she spoke about perseverance and how her greatest fuel for success had been those who doubted her. "I dedicate this award to my children, Alexander and Olivia, who taught me that there are no limits to what we can achieve when love forms our foundation. I dedicate this award to my children, Alexander and Olivia, who taught me that there are no limits to what we can achieve when love forms our foundation." The applause swelled around her as Mia accepted the crystal trophy, its weight substantial in her hands, much like the journey that had brought her to this moment. As she descended from the stage, she caught James's gaze once more. He remained fixed in place, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief and calculation. Returning to her table, Mia was immediately surrounded by well-wishers. The chairman of a multinational bank leaned in to discuss potential expansion opportunities. A tech CEO praised Clean Slate's proprietary tracking software. Through it all, Mia maintained her composure, though she remained acutely aware of James's presence across the ballroom, his eyes following her movements. An hour later, as the formal dinner concluded and guests began mingling freely again, Mia excused herself from a conversation about sustainable business practices and made her way to the bar. She requested sparkling water with lime, maintaining her lifelong policy of clarity during business events. As the bartender prepared her drink, she sensed someone approaching from behind. That was quite a speech. James's voice carried the familiar timbre that once made her heart race. Now it merely triggered a clinical sort of interest, like observing an artifact from another lifetime. Mia turned, glass in hand, maintaining a measured distance between them. "Thank you. Brevity has its virtues." Up close, the years showed more clearly on his face. Fine lines radiated from eyes that had once gazed at her with false affection. His suit, while impeccably tailored, couldn't disguise the slight thickening around his waist that spoke of too many business dinners and too little physical activity. "We need to talk," he said, lowering his voice. "Privately." "I disagree," Mia replied calmly, taking a deliberate sip of her water. "Anything you have to say can be said right here." James's jaw tightened, a familiar tell that signaled his frustration. "After 15 years, I think I deserve 5 minutes of your time." "Deserve?" Mia allowed a small, cold smile. Interesting choice of word. She observed him struggling to maintain his composure, unused to having his demands refused. His gaze darted around the room, clearly concerned about being overheard. "At least move somewhere less public," he insisted, gesturing toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. Against her better judgment, Mia acquiesced, moving toward an alcove partially screened by an arrangement of exotic flowers. The murmur of conversation provided a background that ensured their privacy without complete isolation. "You mentioned children in your speech," James began, his voice tense. "You said children. You had the babies?" Mia regarded him with clinical detachment. "I had the twins, yes. They're 15 now." "Twins?" The word seemed to physically impact him. "A boy and a girl?" "Alexander and Olivia," she confirmed, watching emotions flicker across his face. Surprise, confusion, and something that resembled calculation more than any paternal feeling. "Are they—" He hesitated, then finished in a lower voice. "Are they mine?" The possessive pronoun grated against Mia's ears. "Biologically? Yes. In every way that matters? No." She watched his breathing accelerate slightly, his mind clearly racing behind those blue eyes that had once seemed so captivating to her younger self. "You should have told me," he said, an accusatory edge hardening his voice. "Should I?" Mia's tone remained neutral. "I recall your exact words were to disappear from Chicago and that I was a temporary distraction that had become inconvenient. You made your position extremely clear." James flinched slightly at having his own words reflected back to him. Things were different then. I was different. Were you? Mia asked, genuinely curious at his revisionist perspective. Look at you now. He gestured vaguely at her designer dress, the award she'd set aside, her entire presence. Successful, powerful. Everything worked out in the end. The audacity of his statement nearly broke her careful composure. Not thanks to you, she replied, her voice dropping to ensure only he could hear her. It worked out because I worked while you slept. I studied while you partied. I built while you inherited. A flush crept up his neck, the same tell of anger she remembered from their last encounter 15 years earlier. Before he could respond, a group of executives approached, recognizing Mia from her time on stage. "Mia, congratulations again," said a silver-haired woman who headed a major investment firm. "We need to discuss that proposal for the Park Avenue buildings. My board was impressed with your presentation last week." "I'd be delighted," Mia replied smoothly, turning partially toward them. "In fact, James Thornton here might be interested as well. Thornton Industries is expanding to New York and might require our services." James's expression oscillated between discomfort and humiliation as he realized the position Mia now occupied, that of a potential vendor to his struggling company. The power dynamic between them had inverted so completely that he seemed unable to formulate a response. "Thornton Industries? Of course." The woman extended her hand to James. "I heard about your New York expansion. Bold move in this market." As the conversation shifted to business prospects, Mia observed James struggling to maintain his executive persona. The financial challenges facing his company were common knowledge in business circles, though he attempted to project confidence as he discussed Thornton's expansion plans. When the group finally moved away, James turned back to Mia, desperation more evident in his expression. "Can we talk somewhere truly private? Please? There's so much to discuss." Mia consulted her watch, an understated Patek Philippe that had been a gift to herself when Clean Slate reached its first 100 million in valuation. "Actually, I need to go. My children are waiting for me." The emphasis on the word children was subtle but unmistakable. James caught it immediately, his jaw tightening once more. "You know how important it is to be present for one's children," she added, meeting his gaze directly. The barb landed precisely as intended. James's face flushed deeper, his composure cracking further. "This isn't over, Mia. 15 years is a long time, but biological connections don't simply disappear. I have rights." "Rights?" Mia repeated, allowing genuine amusement to color her tone. Another interesting word choice. She gathered her award and clutch, preparing to depart. "If you're truly interested in Clean Slate services for your New York offices, have your operations director contact my team. We provide exceptional service, though I should warn you, we're not the cheapest option. We believe in paying living wages and using sustainable products. Quality has its price." With that parting comment, Mia turned and moved through the crowd toward the exit, accepting final congratulations with gracious nods. She could feel James's eyes boring into her back but didn't give him the satisfaction of turning around. In the back of her town car, Mia finally allowed herself to release a shaky breath. The encounter had affected her more than she cared to admit. Seeing James again, hearing his voice, observing his mannerisms, had transported her momentarily back to that devastating day in his apartment. But unlike that day, she had walked away this time with her dignity not merely intact, but fortified. Her phone chimed with a text from Olivia. "How was the speech? Did you remember to thank us?" Smiling, Mia typed back, "Speech went well. Of course I thanked you too. You're my best accomplishment." As the car navigated through Manhattan's evening traffic, Mia gazed at the illuminated buildings passing by. 15 years ago, she had arrived in this city with nothing but determination and 2 infants depending on her. Now those buildings housed corporations that competed for Clean Slate's services and her children were preparing applications to the nation's most prestigious universities. The car pulled up to her building, the doorman immediately moving to open her door. "Congratulations on your award, Ms. Johnson," he said with genuine warmth. "We saw it announced on the business news channel in the lobby." "Thank you, Eduardo," she replied, stepping into the marble-floored lobby. The elevator carried her swiftly to the penthouse floor. As she entered the apartment, she heard Alexander and Olivia's voices from the kitchen, along with her mother's warm laughter. The sound washed away the lingering tension from her encounter with James. "Mom's home!" Olivia called out, appearing in the hallway. "How was it? Did you bring the award?" Alexander followed his sister, both teenagers immediately focusing on the crystal trophy in Mia's hands. "It's bigger than I expected," Alexander observed, examining the engraving with typical analytical precision. "Let me see your speech," Olivia demanded, always the communications expert of the family. As Mia handed over the folded paper from her clutch, she studied her children's faces, these remarkable human beings she had raised alone, who had never known the man whose features they subtly carried. Alexander had James's height and jawline, while Olivia had inherited his persuasive charisma, though she channeled it toward justice rather than manipulation. How would they react when they eventually learned the truth? The question had haunted Mia for years, becoming more pressing as they approached adulthood. Tonight's encounter with James made that reckoning seem suddenly, uncomfortably imminent. Later, after the twins had retired to their rooms to finish homework, Mia sat on her terrace with a glass of wine, replaying the evening's events. Her mother joined her, wrapping a cardigan around her shoulders against the autumn chill. "You seem troubled despite your big night," her mother observed, settling into the adjacent chair. "What happened?" Mia hesitated, then answered honestly. "James was there. James Thornton." Her mother's intake of breath was sharp. "Did he recognize you?" "Oh yes," Mia confirmed. "We spoke. He asked about the twins." After 15 years of silence, the nerve of that man. Her mother's indignation was palpable. "What does he want?" "I'm not entirely sure," Mia admitted. "But I suspect it has something to do with his company's financial troubles and the fact that Alexander and Olivia are now potentially valuable assets in his eyes." "Those children are yours," her mother said fiercely. "He gave up any claim to them the moment he rejected you." Mia nodded, though she knew the legal reality might be more complicated. "I've protected them from the truth their entire lives. I'm not sure how much longer that's possible." As her mother returned inside, Mia remained on the terrace, gazing at the city that had given her a second chance. Tomorrow's newspaper would feature her photo receiving the award, and somewhere in that same business section would be a mention of Thornton Industries' expansion to New York. Their paths had converged again after 15 years, creating ripples that threatened the carefully constructed peace of her family. While the applause from her speech still echoed in her memory, Mia didn't notice that James, desperate and with nothing to lose, was already planning a move that would threaten the peace she had carefully built for her family, a direct confrontation with the twins she had protected from the truth for 15 years. While the applause from her speech still echoed in her memory, Mia didn't notice that James, desperate and with nothing to lose, was already planning a move that would threaten the peace she had carefully built for her family, a direct confrontation with the twins she had protected from the truth for 15 years. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Mia's office as she studied the front page of the New York Times business section. Her photograph graced the main article, "Clean Slate CEO Receives Entrepreneur of the Year Award," while a smaller item in the corner announced, "Thornton Industries expands to NYC amid third year of declining profits." The juxtaposition felt like poetic justice. Her intercom buzzed. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. Thornton is requesting a meeting at your earliest convenience. He says it's regarding potential services for their new headquarters." Mia's fingers tensed against the newspaper. She had expected James to contact her, but not quite so boldly or quickly. "Schedule him for 4 o'clock, she replied after a moment's consideration. "And Rachel, please ensure Claire accompanies me with the standard service proposal." The hours before the meeting passed in a blur of conference calls and strategy sessions. At 3:50, Mia made subtle adjustments to her appearance, refreshing her lipstick, straightening the collar of her tailored suit. This wasn't vanity. It was armor. At precisely 4 o'clock, her assistant announced James's arrival. Mia took a deliberate breath, arranging her features into a mask of professional detachment. James entered with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding rooms, though Mia detected a slight hesitation when he saw her behind the expansive desk. Behind him followed a young woman carrying a tablet and leather portfolio. "James," Mia greeted him with practiced neutrality. "Welcome to Clean Slate." "Mia," he replied, glancing around her office, taking in the awards displayed on the credenza, the view of Manhattan, the subtle signifiers of power and success. "Impressive space." "Thank you. This is Claire Waters, our lead accounts manager. She'll be presenting our service proposal." James frowned slightly. "I was hoping we could speak privately first." "I operate a transparent business, James. My team is involved in all client discussions from the outset." The message was clear. This was strictly business. Claire efficiently presented Clean Slate's comprehensive cleaning and maintenance proposal for Thornton Industries' new headquarters, 12 floors of premium office space in Midtown. The presentation was flawless, highlighting eco-friendly products, fair labor practices, and proprietary tracking technology. Throughout the presentation, James barely glanced at the materials, his attention fixed on Mia. She recognized the calculating look in his eyes, the same expression he'd worn when determining how to dispose of her 15 years ago. "The proposal looks thorough," James commented when Claire finished, "but I have some questions I'd prefer to discuss directly with Ms. Johnson." Claire looked to Mia, who nodded slightly. "Thank you, Claire. Would you excuse us for a few minutes?" Once the door closed, the atmosphere shifted palpably. James leaned forward, dropping the business pretense. "Twins," he said quietly. "You had twins, and you never told me." "You made it abundantly clear you wanted nothing to do with us," Mia replied evenly. "That was 15 years ago. I was young, focused on taking over my father's company. And I was what? An inconvenience?" Mia's voice remained measured, though her pulse quickened. "Your exact words, if I recall correctly." James had the grace to look uncomfortable. "People change, Mia. Circumstances change." "Indeed they do. I built a $300 million company while raising 2 exceptional children. You inherited a thriving business that's now losing market share after 3 consecutive years of negative growth." She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "Circumstances do change." James's jaw tightened. "Tell me about them." "Why?" The question was genuine. "They're my children too." "Biologically, perhaps, but you forfeited any claim to parenthood when you offered me a check to take care of the problem." Mia opened her desk drawer and removed a plastic sleeve containing the torn check she'd kept all these years. "Do you remember this?" James stared at the faded paper, his expression darkening. "I never thought you'd actually have them alone." "What did you expect? That I'd simply disappear? That your problem would conveniently solve itself?" Each word was precisely controlled, 15 years of buried anger channeled into clinical precision. "I expected you'd be practical," he muttered, unwittingly echoing his words from that devastating day. "I was practical," Mia countered. "I built a life, a business, and a family. Without you." James shifted strategies, his expression softening into something resembling regret. "At least tell me something about them, please." Mia studied him, searching for genuine interest beneath the calculation. Against her better judgment, she relented slightly. "Alexander is brilliant with technology. He's developed an app with over 200,000 users. Olivia will likely become the youngest attorney to join an elite firm in a few years." Something flashed in James's eyes. Pride, perhaps. or more likely, recognition of potential assets. They sound exceptional. They are, Mia agreed. They've been raised with values you might not recognize. Compassion, integrity, hard work. James's phone chimed with a notification. He glanced at it, then back at Mia. My wife is texting. We're having dinner with potential investors tonight. And how is married life treating you? Mia asked, not out of jealousy but genuine curiosity. A shadow crossed his face. Complicated. Catherine is from the right family, has the right connections. She's been disappointed that we haven't had children. I see. Mia didn't press further, though she noted the careful phrasing. The right family, the right connections. Echoes of why she hadn't been enough. I want to meet them, Mia. His tone shifted to the authoritative one he'd used when running board meetings. Alexander and Olivia deserve to know their father. That's not your decision to make, Mia replied firmly. They're 15 years old. When they turn 18, I'll tell them the complete truth, and then they can decide if they want contact with you. Until then, stay away from my children. James stood, frustration evident in his posture. You can't keep them from me. Legally? Legally? Mia interrupted, rising to face him. By all means, let's discuss legal standing. Let's discuss how you threatened my career, how you ensured I couldn't find work in Chicago, how you abandoned your pregnant girlfriend with explicit instructions to disappear. I've kept detailed records, James. Every email, every rejection letter, the check you wrote. Would you like that story in court? In the press? He paled slightly. You wouldn't. I built clean slate from nothing while you were dismantling your father's legacy. Don't test my resolve. Their standoff was interrupted by a knock at the door. Claire returned with additional materials, her professional smile never faltering despite the obvious tension in the room. I've brought the supplementary sustainability reports you requested, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Claire. Mia smoothly transitioned back to business mode. Mr. Thornton was just leaving. He'll review our proposal and get back to us. James gathered himself, adjusting his tie with a practiced gesture. Actually, I've decided to accept your proposal with one modification. I'd like a 15% discount for the first year. We can offer 10%, Mia countered automatically, with a 3-year commitment. Done. He extended his hand, the gesture more challenge than agreement. Mia shook it briefly, her grip firm. Claire will draft the contract. We can begin service next month when your offices are ready. As James turned to leave, he paused at the door. This conversation isn't over, Mia. For now, it is. She resumed her seat, a clear dismissal. Good day, James. When the door closed behind him, Mia allowed herself a moment to exhale slowly, steadying her nerves. The confrontation had gone largely as expected, but James's determination to meet the twins concerned her. She knew him well enough to recognize when he was fixated on a goal. That evening, Mia arrived home to find Alexander and Olivia in the living room, engaged in their usual activities, Alexander coding on his laptop, Olivia outlining an argument for her debate team. How was your day? She asked, kissing each of them on the forehead. Got another 100 downloads after that tech blog feature, Alexander reported without looking up from his screen. And fixed that notification bug users were complaining about. Harvard sent an email, Olivia announced excitedly, showing Mia her phone. They want an interview next week. Mia's heart swelled with pride as she read the message. That's fantastic, Liv. An interview at 15. They clearly recognize how exceptional you are. MIT reached out to Alexander last week, Olivia added, nudging her brother, though he's too modest to brag about it. It's just an informational interview, Alexander mumbled, though his pleased expression betrayed his excitement. Mia's phone buzzed with a text notification. Glancing down, she felt a chill run through her veins. Unknown number. They're Thorntons, whether you acknowledge it or not. This isn't over. She deleted the message immediately, forcing her expression to remain neutral despite the intrusion. James was clearly not going to respect her boundaries. Later that night, after the twins had gone to bed, Mia sat in her home office reviewing the contract with Thornton Industries. Adding a confidentiality clause had been Claire's suggestion, a subtle reminder to James that his business dealings with Clean Slate were separate from personal matters. The following Wednesday, Mia was reviewing quarterly projections when her phone rang. It was Alexander's school. "Ms. Johnson, this is Principal Winters. I wanted to inform you about an incident that occurred today." A man approached Alexander and Olivia as they were leaving campus. He identified himself as a friend of yours. Mia's blood ran cold. "Did he give a name?" "James Thornton. He gave your children his business cards and suggested they contact him when they wanted to meet their father." The security guard noticed the interaction and intervened, but I wanted you to be aware. Rage and fear coursed through Mia's body. "Thank you for informing me. This person is not authorized to contact my children. Please alert security to prevent any future attempts." The moment she hung up, Mia called her attorney, requesting an immediate restraining order against James Thornton. Her second call was to Claire, instructing her to cancel the Thornton Industries contract immediately, regardless of penalty clauses. When the twins arrived home that afternoon, they immediately approached her in the kitchen, faces filled with confusion. "Mom," Alexander began, holding out a business card, "who is James Thornton? He said he was an old friend of yours." Olivia added, "He seemed nervous. He gave us both cards and said we could call whenever we wanted to meet our father." Mia's careful composure threatened to crack. After 15 years of protecting them from the truth, James had forced her hand in the most invasive way possible. "We need to talk," she said, leading them to the living room sofa. "There's something I should have told you sooner." As they sat together, Mia realized the moment she had both dreaded and perhaps unconsciously prepared for had arrived. It was time for her children to learn the complete truth, not the sanitized version she'd maintained for their protection, but the painful reality of their beginning. 3 days later, Mia requested the twins join her in the living room. The restraining order against James had been granted, the contract with Thornton Industries terminated, and now the most difficult task remained, revealing the truth to Alexander and Olivia. 3 days later, Mia sat in her living room, the torn check resting on the coffee table between her and her children. It was yellowed with age, a physical artifact of the moment that had shaped their lives. Alexander and Olivia sat across from her, their expressions a mixture of confusion and concern. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. "I've told you that your father wasn't ready for family responsibility," Mia began, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "That's true, but it's not the complete story." She took a deep breath, reaching for the strength that had carried her through 15 years of single parenthood and business building. "I met your father in Chicago when I was 24. I was working as an executive assistant at a company called Thornton Industries." She watched comprehension dawn in their eyes at the familiar name. James Thornton had just become CEO after his father died. We became involved, and after 3 months, I discovered I was pregnant with you both. Alexander's analytical mind was already connecting the dots. "The man at school, that was him?" Mia nodded. "When I told James about the pregnancy, I expected support, or at least respect. Instead," she gestured to the check on the table, "he told me I was a mistake, a distraction that had become inconvenient. He wrote this check to solve the problem and told me to disappear from Chicago." Olivia reached for the check, examining the faded ink, the amount, the signature. "He wanted you to get rid of us," she said quietly, her voice tight with emotion. "Yes," Mia admitted, "and when I refused the money, he threatened to use his family's influence to ruin my career in Chicago, which he did. I lost my job, couldn't get hired anywhere else." Alexander, always quieter and more reflective than his sister, looked up from the check. "So that's why we moved to New York? To escape him?" "Partly," Mia nodded. I went to Detroit first, to have you safely with Grandma's help, but I knew New York offered opportunities that Chicago couldn't, especially with the Thornton name working against me there. Olivia, sharp as always, frowned. Why is he suddenly interested in us now, after 15 years of nothing? Mia met her daughter's gaze directly. I believe it's because of who you both have become. Successful, brilliant, with promising futures, and because his company is struggling financially while Clean Slate thrives. So we're assets now, Alexander concluded with cold precision. Potential heirs for his failing company? That's my assessment, yes, Mia confirmed. His timing coincides perfectly with Thornton Industries' expansion to New York and their third year of declining profits. The twins exchanged glances, communicating silently as they often did. Olivia spoke first, her voice carrying the confidence that had made her a champion debater. He doesn't deserve to know us, she declared. He abandoned us when we were nothing but an inconvenience. Now that we're valuable to him, he wants back in? That's not how family works. Alexander nodded in agreement. From a purely logical standpoint, his behavior demonstrates opportunism, not paternal interest. He paused, then asked the question Mia had been dreading. Are we really Thorntons? Legally, I mean. Your birth certificates list father as unknown, Mia explained. I never sought child support or legal recognition, but biologically, yes, you carry his DNA. Is that why I'm good at math? Alexander asked with unexpected vulnerability. Because of him? Mia moved to sit between her children, taking their hands in hers. You're good at math because you've worked incredibly hard and have a brilliant mind. Olivia's gift for persuasive speaking comes from her dedication to debate club and her passion for justice. Genetics might provide tendencies, but you've both built your talents through determination and hard work. Olivia leaned against her mother's shoulder. So what happens now? Will he keep trying to contact us? I've filed a restraining order, Mia explained. He's legally prohibited from approaching you or the school. I've also canceled Clean Slate's contract with Thornton Industries. But eventually we'll have to decide for ourselves, Alexander concluded. When we're 18. Yes, Mia confirmed. When you're legal adults, the choice will be yours. If you want to meet him then, I won't stand in your way. Olivia straightened, her expression hardening with resolve. I already know my answer. The man who told you we weren't good enough doesn't get to claim us now that we're exceptional. Alexander nodded in agreement, though his eyes reflected a more complex calculation. Is his company really worth less than Clean Slate now? Despite the gravity of the conversation, Mia smiled slightly. Substantially less. Their market capitalization has fallen 40% in 3 years. So you built something bigger than what he inherited, Alexander mused, starting with nothing but determination and 2 babies. Not nothing, Mia corrected, squeezing their hands. I had you two. You were never a burden. You were my motivation. Everything I built was to create a world where you would never feel unwanted or insufficient. The 3 embraced, forming the tight circle that had sustained them through years of struggle and triumph. When they separated, Olivia wiped tears from her eyes while Alexander adjusted his glasses, both processing the revelations in their own ways. I kept this from you to protect you, Mia said softly. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe you should have known sooner. You made the right choice, Olivia assured her. We understand why you did it. Alexander nodded in agreement. Statistically speaking, children who believe they were unwanted by a parent show higher rates of depression and low self-esteem. Your narrative gave us stability while we developed our identities. Mia smiled at her son's characteristic analysis. Even in emotional moments, he processed the world through data and patterns. The following morning, Mia's phone rang while she reviewed the quarterly reports in her office. The Wall Street Journal was calling for comment on a breaking story. Ms. Johnson, we're running an article on the potential acquisition of Thornton Industries by Lever Group. Our sources indicate Clean Slate Enterprises is consulting on the deal. Would you care to comment? Mia carefully controlled her expression, though no one was there to see it. Clean Slate's financial consulting division works with numerous investment groups. Our client relationships are confidential, but I can confirm that we're expanding beyond facility services into strategic business consulting. After ending the call, Mia opened her email to find a message from Lever Group's CEO, confirming that the acquisition talks had advanced to the next stage. The irony wasn't lost on her. The company she had built might now play a role in the purchase of the very enterprise that had once seemed so far beyond her reach. 2 weeks later, Mia sat at her desk reviewing 3 thick envelopes that had arrived that morning, responses to Alexander and Olivia's early admission applications. Harvard, MIT, and Columbia had all requested interviews with the exceptional 15-year-old twins. Pride swelled in her chest as she arranged the letters side by side, awaiting the twins' return from school to share the news. A notification on her computer screen interrupted her thoughts. The front desk was calling. "Ms. Johnson, James Thornton is in the lobby. He doesn't have an appointment but insists on seeing you. He says it's urgent." Mia's first instinct was to refuse, to enforce the professional boundaries she had established. But curiosity got the better of her. What could drive James to appear unannounced after their last confrontation? "Tell him I'm in meetings all afternoon," she decided, "and remind him that Clean Slate no longer has a business relationship with Thornton Industries." "He's quite insistent, Ms. Johnson. He says it's a personal matter that can't wait." Mia considered her options. A public rejection in her company's lobby might create unwanted attention. Better to end this cleanly. "Inform Mr. Thornton that I'm occupied building a legacy, and that I don't take meetings with people without appointments." As her assistant relayed the message, Mia turned her attention back to the university acceptance letters. The future she had fought so hard to create for her children was unfolding before her, bright, full of possibility, and entirely of her own making. Her phone chimed with a text from Olivia. "Debate tournament finals tomorrow. Can you make it?" "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Mia replied, smiling as she imagined her daughter commanding the stage with the confidence that came from knowing she was valued, supported, and loved. Alexander's message followed moments later. "App update just hit 250K downloads. Coming home late. Study group for advanced calculus." These simple exchanges, the ordinary communications of family life, represented everything James had rejected 15 years ago. Now, as his empire crumbled while hers ascended, Mia felt no triumph, only gratitude for the path that had led her here. On her desk, beside the university letters, stood a framed photograph. Mia, Alexander, and Olivia smiling in front of the first Clean Slate van. Their faces shone with the joy of shared purpose, the unbreakable bond of a family forged through adversity and unconditional love. Turning off her computer, Mia gathered her things to leave early, a privilege she had earned after years of working while others slept. Tonight, she would cook dinner with her children, listen to their stories, and continue building the legacy that mattered most, not the business empire that bore her name, but the 2 extraordinary humans who carried her heart. As she organized the Harvard, MIT, and Columbia acceptance letters on her desk, next to the photo of the 3 of them smiling in front of the first Clean Slate van, Mia finally understood that abandonment hadn't been the end of her story. It had been merely the first chapter of her rise. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.